Lawrence draw at first. The 1-1. And Altuve hits it in the air, pretty deep to left. Going back is LaCastro at the wall, looking up. See you later! 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 Astros win it in the bottom of the ninth!
So that's a little excitement for you. That was a walk-off home run on Sunday evening by Jose Altuve. Welcome back. This is the second episode of our 2021 gear, the Fan Bros Podcast, the NFC Breakdown.
Yeah, the off-season installment. We're getting you all caught up to date. This is the last one of non-fantasy talks, just getting the real football out of the way so we can get to the fun stuff. We just covered the AFC. We ripped the salt. Now we're going straight into the NFC off of some Astros hype. Let's get into it.
The first team in the first conference, the NFC East, the NFC West, as Patrick might say. Start off with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, a lot mounts on Dak Prescott, who was signed to a huge contract. Jerry Jones clearly believes in him, so he should be back, assuming he's as good as ever. The Cowboys might be good. They bring in Jeremy Sprinkle at tight end, just a kind of a blocking option. They bring in quite a few defenders. No huge names, but Keanu Neal, Jordan Lewis, KZ. So just a bunch of decent guys where they might be a better team than they were last year, assuming Dak Prescott is back to himself.
I'm projecting them the number one team in this division. Not the whole NFC, don't get it twisted. I'm not psychotic here. They're the number one team in this division strictly because Jerry put his money where his mouth is and fucking nutted up and gave Dak $160 million after he did the stanky leg on national TV. I mean, I never thought he would do it. It was just a cramp. I mean, I thought he wouldn't do it. I mean, we're going over off season. He finally did it, so we'll see where they're at. We're going right into the next team, the New York Giants. Now, this is a little bit kind of iffy. They've made a lot of off-season moves, but I just don't think it's really going to help them win ball games. They obviously have Daniel Jones. They bring in the big off-season acquisition, Kenny Golladay, and a lot of people thought, I mean, I guess we're just in the fantasy realm and we view him a little bit more than the actual football analysts do, because he only got 4 years, $72 million, when I'm thinking he's literally like a game-changing wide receiver, but it's not that much. All the other teams like kind of brought him in for a workout, didn't even sign him, so we'll see how this pans out. They bring in Kelvin Benjamin, 280-pound wide receiver, now giving a tight end shot, and they're an actual good tight end to go opposite of Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah, Kelvin Benjamin took on the Eddie Lacy diet, where he damn near ate himself out of the league. But I kind of am with you. Golladay wasn't seen to be as highly regarded by real football people, but it should be a good weapon for them. The Giants, I guess by default, would be better than last year, but nothing screams a good team to us based on these acquisitions.
My favorite receiver is still Slayton on that squad. It's still Darius.
I do like Slayton. I like Golladay probably more, but
yeah,
they have a decent core, and if Saquon comes back, that offense might be okay. If their whole team's good, we're not so sure.
Yeah.
So another team in the NFC East is the Philadelphia Eagles. They had quite a bit of turnover. Carson Wentz shipped out of town. It's the Jalen Hurts show. So he looks like he's going to, be a dual-threat quarterback. He's interesting. What does that mean for the receivers and all that? We're not sure. They bring in Joe Flacco as well, but you got to assume Jalen Hurts gets the nod. They bring in Kerryon Johnson, Richard Rodgers, and some decent defensive players. So it looks like Miles Sanders is still probably the feature back. He didn't do all that well. At receiver, it's interesting. A big one is the guy from Alabama, the Heisman winner. Very, very good wide receiver. I don't know. Do you think he makes an early impact?
Devonte Smith? Yeah,
Yes.
I do. I do think I got you right there. I know. I can see you struggling. Is at the tip of your tongue. Devonte Smith.
I was going to say Jalen Waddle,
yeah,
the wrong guy.
Devonte Smith, I do think that is a big move for them and a big impact because Jalen Hurts and him were teammates before. Jalen Hurts, I mean, they had to be thinking about that when they did that. They could have gone a million different directions with that first-round pick, and they decided to bring him in there. So I think that the Eagles are going to be a competing team in this division, but I don't think they're actually going to be able to do anything because of the next team that we're about to touch on.
And that is the Washington football team.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, I am a huge Fitzmagic fan. Fitzy all the way. I'm going to get a Fitzpatrick jersey.
The Amish Rifle.
The Amish Rifle. Me and my dad still say that today from his Texans run. The Amish Rifle. literally getting a jersey for him because I am done with the fucking Texans. We're bringing in Fitzpatrick. We're going to be WFT fans. I mean, it is what it is. And I love what they did. They brought in Curtis Samuels, who was teammates with, you got to help me out now, Terry McLaurin, teammates with Terry McLaurin at Ohio State. So it looks like they're bringing in a little tandem duo from college, seeing if they can run it back in the NFL. And both of them have the skills to potentially help themselves become even better receivers. Because all Terry McLaurin is really missing is another receiver to take pressure off of him. And all Curtis Samuel needs is someone to be the 1A. So, I mean, that's looking with Fitzy airing out the ball. I like the tight end. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be real interesting.
They're an interesting team because they're probably going to be defensive-centric, very strong defense. But their offense, for one, they re-signed most of their pieces on the offensive line. And Fitzpatrick has been a top fantasy quarterback all over the place. So even if it doesn't translate to real football for them, that's just a team that might put up some big fantasy numbers.
Yeah. Sheriff's coming back this season. He was hurt all last season. That's a big thing to note. And again, on the defense, I like to look at the top 10. What I do for fantasy, I'm not really going to go into it, but I go into the top 10 defenses and I look at their offseason transaction and I project who's going to be a good one. That's how I drafted the Steelers last year. I think the Washington football team is going to be that team this year. They bring in a lot of people. They bring in William Jackson from the Bengals, David Mayo from the Patriots, Bobby McCain. I mean, they're looking like they could legitimately be a top 5 defense this year, maybe a top 3 fantasy defense.
Yeah, so I don't think that's out of the range of possibility at all.
We're going right into the NFC North, a shit show. The Texans of the NFC North, the Chicago Bears. Yeah, Andy Dalton, you're our starting quarterback. What do they do in the first round, Greg?
They draft Justin Fields.
I mean, how are you going to do that to a carrot top, man? I mean, we don't got a lot in the league. I mean, we're dwindling now with Wentz and Andy Dalton. The disrespect they have with carrot tops in this league is upsetting.
Yeah, so that's one where I think sooner than later Justin Fields takes over. Now we'll get into him later on fantasy. He's got high ceiling, but right away we're not sold. But that offense should look at least quite a bit different. As weapons goes, they re-sign Allen Robinson. Well, he got the franchise tag, so he's still here for a year. Other than that, probably the same old Montgomery. There's not going to be a lot of change in the Bears other than the quarterback position. So we'll just have to see how preseason and everything plays out to get a better read on them.
Now, a player we're not talking about, but Darnell Mooney, that was open every day of the week last year but couldn't get a damn ball. He could actually be a fantasy option this year. He could have a real season. But other than that, you're not really talking about anybody right now. They're potentials at this point because you don't know who's going to be the actual quarterback. Going to Dan Campbell's new led Detroit Lions. They're coming in with big moves. They ship out Matt Staff. Thank God. I mean, Matt Staff deserved to be on a team.
Absolutely.
But they bring in King Joffrey, Jared Goff. I mean, he's good, but I mean, they have no receiving core anymore. They bring in Brashad Perryman, Tyrell Williams. They bring in Jamal Williams off the line, so they do have a little 1-2 at running back, but still, it's just, I mean, Jared Goff was good with an offensive guru. Let's see if he's even decent without somebody that's scheming for him every week. We'll see that pretty quick. He's either going to get exposed or be able to keep his head above the water. We'll see. And
the Lions were bad with Matt Staff. They downgrade slightly with Jared Goff. So the only thing that interests me on that team from fantasy and real life is how is the running back going to be. So DeAndre Swift looked good. They bring in Jamal Williams, who looked good whenever Aaron Jones wasn't completely healthy. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like? We'll break it down later, but that's the only thing that's interesting to me.
Yeah, and again, we're going to go over the fantasy aspects of all this stuff. We're going to have mock draft specials, draft strategies, who we like, who's going to be bounce back, who's going to take a leap forward. This is all just the first installment of the Fan Bros. We're working on the whole podcast system. It's about to be a lot different this year, boys. But the next team we're going into is the Green Bay Packers. Other than Aaron Rodgers hosting Jeopardy potentially for the rest of his life, I mean, this team is going to suck next year.
Yeah. I mean, I would think he'd be back, right? Because it'd be hard to see a scenario where if he's not traded, he actually walks away. If he does, everything changes. Let's assume he comes back. This team is again among the best in the NFC. Aaron Jones is back with no Jamal Williams, so he should be a lead horse. A.J. Dillon will probably get more opportunity. That's for another episode. Other than that, not a lot of changes. It's really just a matter of, does Aaron Rodgers come back and they're great, or he doesn't, and then this team doesn't have a whole lot of talent without him.
And I would say that he does come back, but he's literally following the playbook and the guide left by Brett Favre, his predecessor. So, I mean, that's exactly what he did. He wanted to walk away. He didn't walk away. He retired, came back the next year. Or not even, he came back, I think, mid-season. Anyways, he's following the footsteps of Brett Favre.
He forced a trade via sitting out.
Yeah, so
fake retirement.
Fake retirement. So, there could be a fake retirement this season if we're following the Brett Favre playbook. So, yeah, let's go right into your home favorite, Greg.
Yeah, the Minnesota Vikings, who were a big letdown last year, really bad on defense. Kirk Cousins was pretty good. I think he's better in fantasy than real life. Mm-hmm. And they got Justin Jefferson, who is huge. So he and Adam Thielen are good 1-2 punch at receiver. Dalvin Cook should be electric again. They drafted a first-round tackle on the offensive line. I still think that unit's probably weaker than average, which really hurts their ability to be a good team. Fantasy-wise, they're probably strong. They bring back Sheldon Richardson, and they get Dalvin Tomlinson, two big defensive tackles who should help them stop the run a little, maybe be more competitive. I still don't think they're a great team. And also, they got a big old cornerback signing.
Yeah, and I actually like their linebacker signing, Nick Vigil. Not that he's crazy. I like Mackenzie Alexander. He hasn't been crazy in the NFL. He's been decent, though. He's burnable, but he's not too bad. I like Brashad Breeland and their number one trade that they did. They signed him on a one-year deal, Patrick Peterson. Now, that could be a big bust or a big payout because they need corners, and they got 3 right here they just signed, so let's see. And Xavier Woods from the Cowboys, that's a pretty good signing too. So pretty decent signings, as in they didn't pay a lot, and they kind of revamped that whole burnable secondary, so let's see how they do this season.
Yeah, so they're probably looking more like an average team, kind of, maybe slightly above. But there's some interesting pieces on the defense that maybe they're more competitive.
I think Dalvin Cook can carry them to a potential playoff run. So I mean,
he is excellent. If he stays healthy as fantasy goes, he's top 3 to lock.
Yeah.
So the next division up is the NFC South. We'll start in Atlanta with the Falcons. Matt Ryan's still going to be the guy behind the steering wheel. Running back is interesting. Todd Gurley is no more. They go and they get Mike Davis, who was a fantasy darling for a big chunk of last year when McCaffrey went down. Yeah, Hunter here picked him up and got the spoil the riches. But he's an interesting case if he can be the same guy in Atlanta or if he's better suited as a change of pace back.
Oh, yeah.
Other than that, not a whole lot of things to touch on. They're kind of the same team, so lost Julio Jones. I mean, how do you feel about the Falcons?
I mean, I like certain pieces of this team because they are a good offense. They're going to be able to move the ball. Even though they get down, they're going to be able to score. So I'm not saying draft Matt Ryan, but I think that Mike Davis is going to be a steal in fantasy because he's going pretty late. And he's going to be able to stay on for all downs. He's going to be the pass catcher when they're down, and he could run the ball up the gut when they're up. If they're up, that's a potential. But I do love me some Kyle Armpits. I think that he's going to be a mismatch as a rookie. Not going to set any rookie records, but I do like that first-round draft pick. That's going to make the offense kind of dynamic with Calvin Ridley and him.
And I skipped over that. You're right. That's a huge addition. They take an electric tight end who's more of a wide receiver, so we'll get him for fantasy. He's got a sky-high ceiling. But you're the first person, Hunter, that's made a bold proclamation on Mike Davis, good or bad. So I'm interested to see if he pans out.
I mean, he just won me the ship a little bit in the league.
And he looked good doing it.
He looked good. I mean, he looked real good doing it. A lot of people came to me trading. CMC owners, Trey, suck my fucking left nut. I beat you in the ship because you didn't have him. So, yeah, it is what it is.
And, a lot of times people, the guy like this, the big old free agent who did well last year as a backup, goes to a new team. It doesn't always work out, but he'll be one to watch, no doubt.
Let's go to the Carolina Panthers, which is pretty interesting because a lot of teams say this. Derek Carr came out and said this bullshit. I mean, a lot of teams say this. We were 5 or 6 plays away from being a 12-win team when the Panthers were literally in close games the entire season. There was about 4 or 5 games where they're like within 3 points with like a lot of games. So if they could kind of flip that switch, maybe get some defensive stops. They bring in A.J. Boye. I love A.J. Boye. They bring in Hassan Reddick, Denzel Perryman. They potentially can kind of get it going. I like that a lot. And they bring in Sam Darnold on a trade. So it's going to be a quarterback battle between Sam Darnold and the XFL. Who's the
Man, he was for the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably going to be the Sam Darnold show. They put some faith in him. They opted not to draft a quarterback. And this team goes probably as Sam Darnold goes. So
Yeah.
we'll have a lot of fantasy breakdowns, the different situations that can happen in Carolina. But the receiving core is still strong. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, CMC is still there. So it's an interesting team, but they've got a big question mark at quarterback, and we'll get into that later. But the Panthers, boom or bust kind of team.
Now, I actually like this team going forward, not really for their quarterback, but because their quarterback is going to sling it. New Orleans Saints, they re-signed Jameis Winston. It's going to be a quarterback battle between him and Taysom Hill. I think Winston will win this, but if it's Hill, I still kind of like it as well for a bounce-back season for Michael Thomas. And I think Alvin Kamara reassures himself into the top 5 running backs, real life and fantasy this season, getting it done. I actually like the Saints this year. They re-signed some of the defensive pieces, Marcus Williams, PJ Williams, nothing too crazy. They bring in Nick Vannett at tight end, help run block. They lost Cook. I kind of like what they're doing here.
Yeah, and no disrespect to Drew Brees, but I don't think he was anything special the last year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they even take a step forward now with Jameis or Taysom Hill. They've got a lot of talent, and those quarterbacks, okay, if they name one the starter, I think that guy immediately becomes a top 12 fantasy option from draft time. We'll talk about it later, but they're that kind of a talented team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Drew Brees has been good since he had that record-breaking receiving year from Michael Thomas. He's kind of been washed ever since then. So, I mean, the arrows are pointed upwards right now. I know a lot of Saints fans are arrows pointing down, but I think that for fantasy, potentially real life, this could be an actual good team. Now, the Super Bowl champions, I'll let you touch on this, Greg.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird to say, right? Tom Brady goes to a team that's 8-8. They have, obviously, talent, and they win the ship. So, as far as them, the big news is everybody's coming back. Everybody of meaning is coming back. They found a way to keep Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, as well as Shaq Barrett, Ndamukong Suh, Levante David. So basically they're running it back with the best team in football from last year. I don't know if they run it back, but you've got to assume they're one of the top 5 teams in the whole league.
And I think just like the Saints, their arrow is trending upward. It's hard to trend upward after you just did it all and you took a doo-doo on the Chiefs' chest. But I think because he was clicking, Tom Brady, was clicking in the second half of the season with the offense. And they admittedly came out and said at the end of the season that it took until about week 8 or 9 for Tom Brady to actually get acclimated to the offense, for Bruce Arians to implement his things that he liked from it. So I do see this offense supporting 3 fantasy receivers, including tight ends as the receiver. I don't think it can be 4. I think it's going to be 3. Pick them. Mike Evans, Godwin, Gronk, or Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Godwin. Maybe not Gronk. I think it can support 3, but we'll see. It's gonna be a good offense, no doubt.
And when we break down our fantasy predictions and our strategies, the running back position there is going to be a real topic of importance because it could be a timeshare of nothing, or if one guy of Fournette, Ronald Jones, even Gio Bernard, the newly added, can really take control of that backfield, that could be fantasy gold.
I mean, you got to respect Super Bowl Lenny. I mean, you got to respect Super Bowl Lenny. I mean, there's a reason he was playoff Lenny. There's a reason he was Super Bowl Lenny. I think that they have to. You almost lose Tom Brady in a sense with falling out with the coaches if you don't give Leonard Fournette the run at number 1 at first, because he literally kind of won them that Super Bowl. He was just running through everything, spinning around, doing stuff. I mean, he looked good. So we'll see, though, because it is a crowded backfield.
We're going to move to the last division in the NFC that we're touching on, which is the NFC West. So the Arizona Cardinals, I guess the main thing that you would say they did is they brought in A.J. Green. Now, in real life football, it's a nice piece. I think it helps. On the defensive side of the ball, the big addition was J.J. Watt. Now, what does he have left in the tank? We don't know. But if he's even a part of his former self, they're a lot more balanced of a team, and I do like them. Fantasy will be interesting, who's going to be the guys to go to. But as far as football goes, I like what the Cardinals have done.
And I like that they brought in James Conner, kind of disrespected by a bunch of teams. They don't essentially need him because they retain Chase Edmonds. They obviously let Kerryon go, but I like that once one of them's established, I kind of do like their running back for that team. And on defense, they get Marcus Golden. They bring in Darqueze Dennard, Malcolm Butler from the Patriots. One of Greg's favorites, Chris Branjo. Was he Viking, right?
No. That was Sendejo.
Oh, Sendejo. Don't
But
put me
the
on
old
spot.
the old banjo though.
The old
That's
banjo,
nice.
though. So we'll see. They look like their defense could take a step up this season. So kind of riding on J.J. Watt, though, on the opposite of Chandler. The next team, the Los Angeles Rams, one of my favorite teams in the NFL right now. There's a falling out between the coach and the quarterback, and instead of trying to bullshit talk some things, what do? They go to Cabo and they wheel and deal. They bring Matthew Stafford on a vacation, bring him in the hotel, trade for him. Rams are NFC favorites right now to go to the Super Bowl, in my opinion. Matthew Stafford is in his prime still. They have Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. They even bring Deshaun Jackson. Not that he's anything crazy, but down the stretch, he could do something for them. Still got Tyler Higbee. They let Gerald Everett walk, so they kind of can solidify a tight end. I like what they did a lot.
And I think that's the biggest addition in the entire NFC, and it's kind of not even talked about. Matthew Stafford is on the Rams. We'll finally get to see if the people like myself who have said on a good team, Matthew Stafford is elite. Now we're going to get to see. He's got the weapons. They've got the mastermind. This team will be fun to watch. And Matt Stafford, if he's as good as a lot of people think, they are going to be one of the top 3 teams to go to the Super Bowl as far as Vegas is concerned. And that's pretty enticing because their defense was excellent last year, and it will be so again.
Yeah, and they signed Leonard Floyd, which is nothing crazy, but when you already have a defensive line like that and you bring in one more guy, the Buccaneers are proven of that. You bring in one more guy when you got a crazy defensive line. It's just too much pressure for teams to handle that have stout offensive lines. So this is going to be a good one. I love the Rams this season.
So another team that has a lot going on for it, especially at the quarterback position, the San Francisco 49ers. The big move for them was they draft Trey Lance, 3rd overall, who is a dual threat, kind of inexperienced guy from the same school as Carson Wentz, South Dakota State. He's got a lot of promise. Does he start early? We don't know, but he probably is the future there. As far as this year goes, it's hard to get a good grasp on what's happening. The running backs, they always can just bust somebody out of nowhere, and he's great. They still have Mostert, Jeff Wilson, who they've been excellent with before. They bring in Wayne Gallman. Maybe they can turn him into a superstar. Wouldn't be a surprise. And they bring in Trent Williams. They re-sign him to a massive deal, and he was great. So this team should have a lot of guys coming back from injury, right? The Bosa, other guys of that caliber. Trey Lance makes or breaks them on the offensive side of the ball. They could be a good team.
Yeah. Now, a thing you kind of skipped over is Alex Mack, who's a really good center. He's kind of had some down years. He's coming with Trent Williams. This could potentially be the running game of years past when they went to the Super Bowl and it just looked electric. Their blocking was crisp. George Kittle was out there on the edge, getting ahead, getting into the secondary, just setting up insane blocks. People forget how good George Kittle is at blocking. They only think of him as the pass catcher, but he's literally pancaking. When he's healthy, he is pancaking secondary players. So I like that a lot. They bring in some nice pieces on defense, nothing too crazy. I like Nate Gary a lot. Mosley's okay. Jason Verrett is down of recently, but they needed a cornerback since Richard Sherman's kind of walking away. They re-signed Tart. They bring Tony Jefferson over from the Ravens. So I really like the 49ers this year, and they could be a nice defense to start. Going into the Seattle Seahawks, I'm a big Seahawks guy, but it's just kind of difficult recently. It's just the falling out with the QB and the coach, and then they come back and everything's good. It just seems like there's a little bit under the surface, but I don't think that should affect the season. Chris Carson is re-signed to a 2-year, $14 million deal, and if you have any form of social media and you've seen how ripped up he is, if he doesn't get popped for PEDs, I think he's going to be another RB1 this year. He just looks fucking insane. He's doing workouts I never even thought of. He's making J.J. Watt look like a baby back bitch in his workouts. He's definitely going to be another 1,000-year double-digit touchdown back this year if he's healthy.
He keeps doing it, and what does he have to do for us to all believe, myself included? He's never considered for like the first 2 rounds when he always finishes there.
Yeah.
It's just hard to kind of grasp, but he's back. He should be the lead dog. They don't do a whole lot elsewhere, so I think we see a lot of the same. The question with them is they start hot on offense. Russell Wilson goes ham, looks like the MVP. The receivers are great, and then as the season goes on, they get a little stale. So I think that's just going to be the make or break this year. Does that happen again, or are they able to finally gel for 16 games?
A sleeper little move they had was they brought Gerald Everett in from the Rams. Russ loves tight ends, but he just hasn't had that tight end. They thought it was going to be Olsen last year. It wasn't Olsen. Montana's out of there. He had the back-to-back years of injuries. He looked promising. Gerald Everett's actually a pretty decent talent. He's been competing against Tyler Higbee with Jared Goff throwing him the ball. So he's sneaky. He could actually have a decent season this year. Maybe over 600 yards, a couple tutties, maybe a little streamer potentially. But other than that, their offseason moves, they brought in Pierre Desir, Demarius Randall, Witherspoon from the 49ers, so they kind of revamped that cornerbacks, but I still don't think that defense is where you're going to draft it and start them at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I don't suspect they compete for the conference championship, but as far as fantasy is concerned, it looks like that offense should be more of the same, and that's really something we like to see. So, just to kind of summarize on some top offenses, who is a team that you like maybe more than most as far as offenses go? Do you have one in mind that's really something you like?
Dude, I love the Rams. I literally love the Rams, and we're going to get into it because the Rams have my favorite ingredient. 2 receivers that are really good, and one of the receivers just had a really good season compared to the other one, which means it's easy to get that 1B guy. Right now, everybody's Robert Woods, and you can just sneak in there real silent, get your little cup. I like that a lot. I love the Rams this season.
And that's kind of alternated in recent years, right?
Yeah.
One goes off, you pick the other one later, and he's just as good or better.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it is the New Orleans Saints. I think they upgrade by losing a Hall of Famer in Drew Brees.
Yeah.
Whichever quarterback takes over, I do like. Jameis Winston, he throws a lot of picks. For fantasy, he's gold. In real life, I think he'll be pretty good. They've got a good line. Their weapons are still good. Kamara is a forgotten man who's incredible. I think the Saints are a slept-on offense that's going to be somebody you want a piece of.
And we're not talking about him right now. We will when we get to the fantasy aspects. Is Trotman, their tight end. Evidently, he's really undervalued. They're liking him a lot. He's got camp hype, and he can catch the ball. There's not a lot of people on that team right now besides Michael Thomas that can catch the ball. So that's going to be important. I like the Saints a lot, though, this season. I don't know if they're going to win games, but they are going to have a good offense.
Absolutely. And so as far as fantasy goes, we'll be spending a lot of time on them. Hey, y'all, that's it for us. Thank you for joining us on our first 2 episodes. We have a lot more to bring you: draft prep, draft strategies, and draft rankings. This is the Fan Bros Podcast. It's 2021, baby. Let's go. G's, cause the G's show me love. I came in the game 17 real loud.